Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but first we want to give a shout out to our two new partners, We Coach and the Global Community of Women in High School Sports. Both of these organizations advance the interests of women coaches, women administrators, and they're organizations that you should be involved with and support. For more information about We Coach, go to wecoachsports.org. You'll see all the resources that are available to you and your coaching staff. And for the global community, go to globalcommunityofwomeninsports.org. Again, these are two great organizations for our profession, particularly advancing the interest of women coaches, women administrators. Now, let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. At my school, we use surveys for just about everything, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the surveys that came back were almost always over the top positive. And they'll be the same for you. But the surveys also allowed that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. And sometimes they'd share a small issue that you could address and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it because you hadn't done a survey. If you've never done a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to sell your tickets online. They'll teach you how to scan the attendees that come to the game so you can collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager working with you with hands-on support. Go to hometownticketing.com. And they'll also show you how you can sell digital tickets for all kinds of events like school dances, theater and music productions, even graduation. Go to hometownticketing.com and start selling your tickets digitally. That's hometownticketing.com. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration, but there's so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with mobile accessibility, and they have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come with athletics. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication, and even help with their own certification management. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. And with Final Forms, your data is secure. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and see what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com and mention the podcast. Use the code ADPOD10, that's ADPOD10, and get 10% off. Start creating custom branded content for your school social media channels. Go to Gipper.com and get started today. We also want to thank Huddle. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Over 200,000 teams across 40 different sports are using Huddle to help their teams and their athletes play better using video and analytics. Okay. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, we were a Huddle school. And our coaches just love the mobile apps, the smart cameras. Of course, they love the analytics, but there was so much more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from clubs and youth teams all the way through high school, colleges, and pros. Huddle is a complete solution providing professional grade analysis. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and your program and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their experts. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Go to huddle.com and get started today. We also want to thank SnapRaise. Go to snapraise.com and see how their fundraising platform can help you get away from the fundraising headaches of the past. There's no selling products or managing lists. Our coaches use SnapRaise, and it was just fantastic. As an athletic director, I knew what was going on, but I didn't have to be involved. There's no upfront cost. Your data is secure. And what's more important, it works. Choosing the best fundraiser for you and your group is critical, and you can put the SnapRaise digital fundraising difference to work for your school. Go to snapraise.com and check out the thousands and thousands of dollars that they've helped schools just like yours raise using their platform. Change your fundraising game plan and start a fundraiser that works for you. Go to snapraise.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive. Their indoor scoring tables and video boards not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com to see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com, or email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all your teams, for all your sports, or a unique way for your Hall of Fame to be accessed by students and visitors, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame to get started. Their touchscreen consoles and library of templates will help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Okay, you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com, or go to their website, vitalsignswalloffame.com, and let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. One of the things that we like to do with the podcast is help aspiring ADs remove that aspiring and actually enter the profession. And we've got a great guest today. Our guest is Kate Doherty. She's a registered athletic administrator, an aspiring AD. She's also an athletic trainer and has a broad background in that. And hopefully, some of our listeners will include some administrators at schools, and they'll reach out to Kate, which I would certainly recommend. So Kate's also from the Boston area. Let's go and get started. Kate Doherty, welcome to the podcast.
Jake, thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic. I'm pretty excited.
Well, we're glad to have you on. Again, we've had a number of aspiring ADs on in the past, and I think we've got a pretty good track record of helping them get settled at a great school. So let's go and get started. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that Kate Doherty bio in about 4 minutes. Take us up through, maybe college graduation. And we'll take a break, and then we'll come back and hear more about your career. So what's the Kate Doherty origin story?
Kate was a tomboy growing up, and Kate played a lot of sports, did the whole tag football thing with the boys in the backyard. Ended up being your typical 3-season athlete back in the day, the soccer, basketball, softball. They didn't offer lacrosse at my high school when I went, ironically. So did that. I loved the sports that I was in. I had a great relationship with a lot of coaches in my time. And it fueled me. It actually made me a better student. I definitely became a better student because I was an athlete, because I became focused. And my coaches helped me with that too. They were like, you want to do great at one thing, you gotta try hard at something else. So I appreciated a lot of the advice that I got from them. I actually ended up going to college first at the University of Miami. I decided I wanted to be a physical therapist. And I ended up rowing crew at U Miami. So I got some medals, that we can show off every once in a while. I also was a club soccer player. Academically, the program didn't work for me. The school was just way too big. I was just lost. And I was just one of those people that just needed a little bit more attention and smaller classrooms. So I ended up coming back home, reset my gears. And I decided, AT was really what I wanted. I just wasn't smart enough to know the difference back then of what the difference between the two professions were. So I ended up going to Merrimack College. It was a fantastic choice. I'm really happy with what I did there. And I received a bachelor's degree in athletic training and sports medicine. Lot of clinical hours, a lot of hands-on time, really changed how I looked at athletics. It was fantastic. And then I, upon graduation, immediately started working in high schools as an athletic trainer. Right away, it was great. I started with a PT outreach company to a high school. I was very dedicated to that high school for a long time. And then, the careers kind of change a little bit once the kids come into the mix. But that's kind of how I started. It was the love of athletics, and it carried me through college, and it also kind of sharpened where I really wanted to go as far as career and where I wanted to stay. So that's the 411 on little me to big me, if that's enough.
As I shared, you and I were talking before we came on, we've had a couple of athletic trainers on the podcast, and even a couple of athletic director / athletic trainer combinations. For me as an athletic director, I was very blessed with some really great trainers to work with. And I know how full of a plate that job is. When you first started working as an athletic trainer, what was, let's say, what was the level of support that you felt you got from your AD or that school? Was it a good experience? Was it challenging? What were some of the things you remember?
It was well intentioned, I think, but it was very it was new, so they didn't really understand how much or little support. It was kind of an old school era, and I was the first full timer there. They had really just had like a guy who would just kind of cover football games before me, and that was it. So to have someone actually in the room was a big change to them, and the fact that when the bell rang, there was someone in that room to service the kids was great. It was well received. But you go through these little bumps and speed bumps along the way where coaches don't understand exactly what your role is, and they expected that you were just going to tape this kid up and throw him back out on the field, and then come to understand that there was a little bit more to it. And so it's learning and growing pains. I think it was good. I definitely know my AD was very well intentioned. I had a great relationship with him. If I could go back, I would like for both of us to work together longer. He's retired, and he was just a really nice guy. And it was great that he was very honest with me always. And I appreciated that too. And I think, the experience overall was good. I think, every school you have, depending on how large your program is, you can have anywhere from 30 to 70 coaches in your team, in your program. And those are 70 different personalities. So as difficult as it is for an AD to work with each individual one of those personalities, the athletic trainer has to do the same. So it is a lot, but it's like any other job. You bite off as much as you can chew. You do your best that day, go home, you try again tomorrow.
Oh no, absolutely. And again, it's a way to stay involved in athletics, beyond those days where we're hanging up our uniforms, our participatory uniforms. Okay. All right. Very cool stuff. For listeners, our guest today is Kate Dougherty. She's a registered athletic administrator, longtime athletic trainer, and aspiring AD. We're going to hear more, but let's take our first break. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank SnapRaise for their support of the podcast. Go to snapraise.com and see how their fundraising platform can work for you. Get away from the fundraising headaches of the past. There's no selling, there's no list management, there's no inventory. It's so easy to use. Our coaches use SnapRaise for years, and it was just wonderful. As an athletic director, I knew what was going on, but I didn't have to be involved. As I said, there's no upfront cost. Your data is secure. And what's more important, it works. Choosing the best fundraiser for you and your group is critical, and you can put the SnapRaise digital fundraising difference to work for your school. Go to snapraise.com and see the thousands and thousands of dollars that they have helped schools just like yours raise using SnapRaise. Again, our coaches used it, and it was just so efficient, so easy. The parents loved it. Go to snapraise.com, change your fundraising game plan, and start a fundraiser that works for you. That's snapraise.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Again, our guest is Kate Dougherty. She's a registered athletic administrator and an aspiring AD. Longtime athletic trainer. Let's go and talk about that. Take us through, those years of working as an athletic trainer and maybe some of the moments that have led you to right now that you're all in on your search for becoming an athletic director. So share that with us.
It definitely started probably early on as an AT. And I think what initially the spark was that there was such a misunderstanding between the coaches and the athletic training role. There wasn't any person to say, this is what they do, and this is how they're going to infiltrate into the program. This is how they're going to work in the program. So it was kind of like me walking around trying to tell everyone this is what I'm supposed to do. And my athletic director at the time was, again, fantastic, and would ask questions like, "Are you supposed to be doing this? Who's the person that should be handling this? Who should handle that?" And he was fantastic, but that kind of made me think, maybe this needs to be started up a little bit higher in the chain. Maybe people that are up higher need to start being a better voice for the athletic trainers and saying, this is what they've gone to school for. This is what they know. I understand you want to win the game, but, we think Junior might have a fracture, so he has to come out of the game and we have to listen to this person. So that's kind of where it started. And then, I started, as the years grew by, I kept thinking, watching the athletic directors that I was working with, being very perceptive of the things that they were doing. I definitely would go back and forth and say, do I really want this on my plate? Do I really want to add this to what I'm already doing? And in the end, it came down to, I really want students to have a great experience with sports. I really do. And that includes just as much of their physical health as their love for the game and their sportsmanship aspects. I think they're all equally important. I think ATs are a little bit of an untapped market for the rising athletic directors because we do have a lot of resources. We historically work alone. We historically multitask. We jump from team to team, knowing players by name, knowing them very personally. So we've already kind of got that ingrained in our head, and that's how we've been kind of brought up to work. But we do offer a little bit of a different perspective because we watch athletics from a different lens. We see things a little differently. Everyone loves to win. Who doesn't love to win, right? You're born loving to win, right? So I've always said, I don't need to tell anybody how important winning is. They already know. Everyone already knows. It's more of like, let's get past that. Let's go to the next step. Let's get past the winning and everything we need to do to enjoy this part of our lives. And winning is this positive byproduct that comes out of it. And that's kind of what started in my head. And I said, okay, how can I do this? How can I get into this? And I just started Google searching. And it's like, how to become an AD. And I found the NIAAA on a website. And I just started reading everything on that website and certifications. I was like, oh, what's this? How do I become an RAA? Okay, started reading and ended up taking courses through like UMaine, I think, online. And did those courses, and I think it's 4 now. At the time it was 3, but I already took the 4th course just as a nice good brush up. And I got my RAA certification. And right around shortly after that, I said, this is fantastic, but it's not enough. So I went and got my master's degree, and I got an MBA with concentration in athletic administration. Because as much as I loved that RAA, I thought there was so much information, and I needed to make sure that I understood it a little bit better. And the best way I could do that was to further my education and focus a little bit harder. And both of those are fantastic sources that I use constantly. I'm constantly on the NIAAA website. I did a lot of those webinars you guys offered during COVID. They were super helpful. Definitely keeps people connected, engaged. So the website is great. I would thoroughly encourage anyone to look, and if you're interested in this, take a peek, read. There's people that can help. There's people that can answer your questions, and there's people that will kind of guide you through the process, which is really fantastic. There's not a lot of organizations that are that helpful, so I appreciate that.
I want to jump back to one point that you mentioned early on about the communication, or maybe the lack of communication within the athletic department. And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but one of the things that we did, primarily the 2 schools that I was at in Florida during 20 years, we were very intentional about what our athletic trainers and what the department was. And they met, with the coaches, they met with the kids, they met with the parents, and I was there too. And we just said, this is how we roll. And the trainer was presenting most of it, but I was there. So everybody could see that, yes, this is how we, do management. This is how we do return to play. This is how we do communication. And I think our coaches ultimately appreciated it, because they knew exactly, where they stood, that the trainer's goal was to get the kids back in action safely. Parents understood the process, and not try to hamstring our trainer by taking their kid to the emergency room and they come back with that note that says no activity for 3 weeks. So I think you need to be intentional. And I'm really glad you gave, a shout out to the NIAAA. We're going to take a little deeper dive later in the podcast to that. But, kudos to you for doing that research and that legwork and going out and getting that RAA, because that's not just something you fill out and get a certificate in the mail.
No.
That's a lot of work. So
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. For our listeners, our guest is Kate Dougherty. She's a athletic trainer, but she's also a registered athletic administrator. We're going to hear a little bit more about that, but let's take another quick break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle. Huddle is how the world sees sports. Go to huddle.com and see how over 200,000 teams are using Huddle to help their athletes play better using video and analytics. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, we were a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Once again, go to huddle.com and see their complete solution for professional grade analysis with all the different apps and features they can provide you. At Huddle, we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. With over 6 million users, you can't go wrong. Go to huddle.com and see how they can help your program and how your school can become a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Again, our guest today is Kate Dougherty. She's a registered athletic administrator and aspiring AD. So if you're a principal, looking for an athletic director, you need to get in touch with Kate. Kate, we always like to let our guests share some of the mentors that they've had in their lives. None of us get to where we're at on our own. And the expression I like to use is, I still hear those voices in my head. So do you have any voices that you still hear?
Absolutely. I would definitely say, and if she hears this, she's going to laugh and she's going to say, really? I'm going to say she was my Little League coach, and she was also the varsity soccer coach. And she was the one that convinced my dad to say that kid needs to try soccer. And that is Linda Rosa. And she was just this fantastic mentor. She was tough, but she was honest. She, definitely was great at helping you with skills, but she could also read kids very well and just say, something's off today, So, and she would address it. Even when we were in Little League, she'd be like, what's going on? You okay? Okay, right. So just watching her do that and think about situations that I've had in my life and go, oh yeah, I remember that time when Coach Rosa did this or Coach Rosa did that. And it's, it's kind of fun. The memories are fading a little bit. It was a while ago. But she was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed, all the moments that I had with her and the team together. I had a lot of great high school coaches. I really did. I was blessed with great high school coaches. My college crew coach was definitely someone who was a totally different breed than what I was used to, but it was also a totally different sport and a little bit more of a commitment than what, high school students are used to. We did 6 a.m. weights 3 or 4 days a week, and we were on the river 6 days a week in the afternoon. And, we traveled and, went up to Georgia and went to Melbourne, and, nationals were in Virginia. So there was a lot more of a commitment, and going into a sport that I knew nothing about, that was a bit of a whirlwind, but he was a pretty decent compass. He was tough. He was really tough, but he was a great compass that would keep you on the right course. And again, he could, pick people out and say, something's wrong, something's off, what's going on, and I appreciate when people can read that. It's a hard skill, it's not something that can be mastered easily. It takes years to do that. And the third mentor I'm going to say is, ironically, there's a weird connection here, because when I was in college doing my clinical rotations, I was assigned to a local high school. And that was that athletic director's first year at that high school. So I was working as a student, AT, under a certified athletic trainer. And then I met the athletic director, and that was her first year. So when I was literally a senior in high school was when she started her, senior in college, was when she started her athletic director career at that school. And push that back to like 10 or 15 years later, when I started becoming more serious about being an athletic director, I picked up the phone and called her and said, do you want an intern? And she said, what? She's like, are you serious? And I said, yeah, no, I'll work for free. I really just want to learn. I'm so desperate to learn. I'll just work for free. These are the days that I can give you. And she's like, okay, come on in. That was Pat Ruggiero. And Pat was fantastic because she didn't hold anything back about the position. It was, this is what you need to do with budgets. This is what is so difficult about transportation. These are the things that you're going to have to remember when, you have to make a difficult decision about field time and coaches and who's going to respond and how they're going to respond. So she was also very upfront, and I appreciate that. I think when people are learning, you have to be honest with them. You don't have to be cruel, but you have to be honest, because they're never going to know how to fix what they're doing wrong if you don't tell them. So those were some of the things that each of those three people had that I appreciated, because I only got better when I was told what I did wrong. If you think about it, if you don't tell people what they're doing wrong, they're just going to keep doing the same wrong thing over and over and over and over again. So those are probably the top three. There's probably a much longer list, but we probably have a time sensitivity on this podcast, so we won't go through all my lists, but I would definitely say those are my top three people.
No, and I love the variety of experiences that you shared that have impacted you along the way, from, the youth coaches growing up, your high school coaches, and people that you now have worked with, and you're right, there's an endless list of those people that have impacted, but Thanks so much for sharing.
Sure.
For our listeners, our guest is Kate Dougherty. She's a registered athletic administrator, also a certified athletic trainer. We're going to hear some more, but going to take another break. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. It's so easy, even I can do it. Once again, go to Gipper.com, mention the podcast, use the code ADPOD10, that's ADPOD10, and get 10% off. Start creating custom branded content for your school's social media channel. Go to Gipper.com. Welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast. Kate, we've already established you're a registered athletic administrator, which if you're listening and you're new to this whole thing, that's not just something you fill out a form and get a certificate back in the mail. To be an RAA, you have to complete the three initial professional courses, 501, 502, and 503 through the NIAAA or through an NIAAA provider. I can still remember when I was getting started, with my NIAAA experience, I took 501 in person, and that really just, I use the expression, it was like drinking the Kool-Aid. I was hooked. And I took, the rest of the initial courses online, but at that point, 503 didn't exist. 502, the manual for 501 was maybe a quarter of an inch thick. Back in the day, 502, I'm not exaggerating, the manual was like 4 inches thick.
Yeah.
And it eventually was split into, 502 and 503, two separate courses. So Kate, let's jump back. You already mentioned that, you took the initiative to take those courses online. What sticks out to you from the curriculum that, you could see from your experience working in athletics as a trainer, this is really some important stuff?
There's so much content. I mean, there really is. And I think it highlights this position of athletic directors, how important it really is, that it's not just getting kids on buses and getting officials to games. It's so much more than that. You really are the director of a major program that is involved in an educational institution. And I think you have to really take a step back and think about that this is a huge position. You are in charge of a large staff and an even larger student population. And it's a program. It's not just what you do in an afternoon. So you have to think about everything from safety, legal liability, your basic HR issues with your staff. And you also have to think, if you're in a high school versus a college, your basic rules and state association rules. If you're in a college, you're dealing with NCAA rules. If you're at a high school, you're dealing with your NFHS and then your state organization rules. And you have to know those. And then you have to make sure that your staff knows those, or at least that they appreciate that they exist. So it's a ton of content. It's a lot. And I think by going to the NIAAA and finding out all this information and just taking that first step and taking the course, I think it's a great way for people to realize if you're really built for this, because it's a terrible thing to think that you're built for something, step into the role, and then go, "Oops, this is not for me." And a lot of people could get hurt when you do poorly at something. So for me, it was a great kind of stepping stone, kind of dipping your toes in the water of saying, is this really something that I can handle? There's so much information out there. And the first two courses were a lot. And I've kept my binders, my massive binders, and go back and kind of look at things and refresh and say, oh yeah, I forgot about that. When COVID happened and there was a lot of downtime for reading, yeah, I pulled out a binder, and the NIAAA was fantastic about holding all these webinars and these live Zoom meetings and people just chatting it out. And all of us were kind of in it together of how we were going to get through this phase, but also let's also use this time while we have it and educate each other on things that we may have forgotten about. There were so many free courses offered, so many free webinars. They were truly helpful. Like it was really phenomenal. I was impressed. And so I think I did the 501, 502 like you to get the RAA. And then maybe a few years later, now they've added 3 courses. So it's a 503. And I took that after the fact. I think it was actually during COVID that I took 504. And I got to tell you, the legal course is a lot. It's a lot. And I definitely think everyone should look at that course. It's very important. There's a lot of content on there. There's a lot of great information on there about just things that we don't think about, whether you're a coach or a teacher or an athletic director, of things that could happen every single day during an athletics program, and that you really need to be aware that these things could happen, how to keep your staff and your athletes safe, and how to proceed afterwards if something, bad does happen. How do you recover? How do you get your staff back on board? How do you take care of your athletes and your team? And again, that's a course that I think quite a few of us could take 2 or 3 times, because it's a ton of information. I really was blown away by the caseloads, the law that is discussed, the legality, the decision making that's discussed, how many players are involved or in these decisions. When you think of your educational institution, and again, if you're at a high school, it's your principals and your superintendents. If you're at college, obviously the bowl gets much bigger for decision makers. But I was really happy that I found it, and I do think that it's something that is helpful to people. I think a lot of people today, or younger people that want to be an athletic director, I think they're going and getting this typical sports management degree, which is fantastic. But if that degree doesn't include some of the content that's from the NIAAA, then you really should take a peek. I really think it's a phenomenal thing. I'm grateful for it. I'm going to keep going. I was lucky enough to reach out to our state rep and say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to be an athletic director, but I only have these 2 courses. How can I learn more? What's the best way for me to do this? And my state rep was fantastic. And he said, I can make you a membership of this status. So you can be on the AAA website. You can use the content, and then you can actually go in, and there's a whole platform for education that you can use inside. There's a news feed where you can talk to other ADs, just like a social media. You can become friends with other ADs and have chats and messages, and it's a nice little AD world that you got there. So I'm grateful for it. I hope most more people find out about it and use it. I think it's a great tool for people to communicate and learn best practices, find out what works. If you're struggling to just fundraise and you're hitting a wall and you can't think of anything, log on. I am sure there's a blog post that you can ask a question. There's an article already written. So I think it's a great idea. So I hope people reach out to that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I appreciate you giving the NIAAA a shout out like that, and your state association. So kudos to the Massachusetts Association too. Very neat stuff. For listeners, our guest today is Kate Doherty. She's a registered athletic administrator, also a certified athletic trainer, and an aspiring AD. We're going to hear some more, but let's take another break. I know that's a shock to our regular listeners. We're going to take a commercial break, but please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms for their support of the podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but there's so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. And they have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that go with having an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like communication and attendance, and they can even help with coaches' certification management. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. It's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps and find out what Final Forms can do for you, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll show you how to set up your system to sell tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and how to collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to sell tickets for all kinds of events like school dances or theater performances, music concerts, even graduation. Go to hometownticketing.com and start selling your tickets digitally. That's hometownticketing.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Kate, one of the things we try to do with the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices, and you're certainly no rookie to the athletic experience. So what are some things that you've seen in your experience that you can look at and say, boy, that's a really great idea, maybe even things that you would put into play when you become an athletic director? Do you have any best practices you can share?
So one of the benefits of being an AT is that we seem to be a fly on the wall for everything. A lot of people don't notice that we're there. So if you're smart enough and you're perceptive enough, you can learn a lot by what's going on around you. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that it's really important to create a tribe, a good solid tribe of people that you can count on. I've always followed my husband's advice, believe it or not, for this one thing, was wherever he worked, he said he always made sure he knew exactly who the custodian or the cleaning people were and introduced himself, because they truly are some of the most powerful people at an organization. And always find a support person that's smarter than you, like a secretary and office manager, because they are also, they're pretty knowledgeable about what they do and the lay of the land. And for an AD, I would probably say the third person in that trifecta would be make friends with your athletic trainer, because they are the fly on the wall that are watching these things all the time, but they just don't have, the static that an AD has, because an AD is thinking about 30 other things, and the athletic trainer is not. We're thinking about something totally different, but we have the time to look at the layout of field and watch where people are standing, and that's interesting. Why is that person over there doing that? I spend a lot of time doing that when you have downtime. But a great best practice that I use is I talk to the kids, and that does come from being an athletic trainer, but I would encourage anyone who's going to be an athletic director that you really do need to just continue to talk to your athletes, and you need to have a connection with them. You need to see them, you need to engage with them, and you need to listen to them, because ultimately this program exists for them. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this so that kids can have a great athletic experience at whatever institution you're at. So if you're not talking to your kids, they're basically your clients. If you're not talking to them and asking them what they need to be more successful, then the program is going to fail, and ultimately you will fail as well. So I definitely am a big proponent of talking to your athletes as much as you possibly can.
Now, we've been doing these interviews for a long time, and as you probably know, and our listeners know, our best practices toolbox suggestions have gone into our two books, the Athletic Director's Toolbox. And those connections that you talk about, with the custodian, the athletic secretary, and the athletic trainer, those are high on the list of toolbox tools, along with establishing those relationships. So if I was that principal and I was looking for an athletic director, Kate, I'd be calling you up right now. So hopefully our listeners, there's somebody out there that's looking for an AD, because you've got your finger on the pulse. Very good stuff.
Oh, thanks, Jake. I appreciate that.
Again, for our listeners, our guest today is Kate Doherty, registered athletic administrator, athletic trainer, and aspiring AD. We're going to take a break, but we'll be back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. They're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all your sports and a neat way to display your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Okay, they've got entire collection of touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to help you honor and recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Kate, one of the questions we've been asking our athletic director guest almost since the start of the show has to do with this idea of toughness. Now, people will say resilience, and to me, they're just wimping out. Okay. Toughness, toughness is important in sports and it's important in life. So here's my question. How can we help a kid develop toughness while also being aware of the very real challenges that a Generation Z kid is experiencing that I never had to go through back when I was in high school? Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that kids are going through today that I didn't have to go through, that you didn't have to go through. I think when we talk about toughness, in my mind, I break it down into kind of two. I break it into a mentally tough and a physically tough. I think the physicality comes from, athletic trainers, and you see kids that, get a paper cut and they want to come out of the game, and you have other kids that, they fractured their ankle and they're saying, no, I'm fine. So we get to see this broad spectrum of what physical toughness is. I think some tenured senior athletic trainers have probably used this phrase before when a kid comes out of the game, is you say, are you hurt or are you injured? That works really well with an older class, probably like a junior in high school and up. It doesn't work really well when you go younger than that. Freshman, sophomore, and high school kids have a hard time with that, and they're just going to say they're injured anyway. And you certainly can't say that question to youth kids, because they are all injured. Every single one of them, is injured. So I think it's a good thing first to kind of establish that, and that it's okay to be injured, and being injured hurts. And it really does. But that doesn't mean that you as a person are no longer tough. It's just, this happened to you, and you're gonna deal with it. And you're gonna listen to the people, the doctors, and everyone who tell you what to do, and you're gonna get through it. And I think that that's the important thing, is to let them know that they're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. The mental toughness, I think this starts at a much, much younger age. I think we really need to do a better job at teaching our kids how to fail. And we don't do that very well. We need to just say, listen, there's that old saying that says in an average baseball game, every single team is going to win 50 games and they're all going to lose 50 games, but it's what they do with the other 50 games that really makes a difference in their season. So if you tell someone that a Major League Baseball player is going to lose at least 50 games an entire year, that the best of the best still lose, you have to teach these kids that losing, it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. You got to let it roll off your back. You got to be able to move forward. You can't just sit there and think about the loss. You have to think about, what can I do better next time? What did I do wrong? How can I improve? And just move forward. And it's tough, but I think if we start a little bit younger, and just teach them about the failure, that this is okay. This is part of life. We're all going to fail. It's how you really bounce back and how you get up that really is what matters. Then I think we'll all be a little bit more successful. I don't know where it went wrong. I have no idea where we went wrong and where all of a sudden we became so bad at this. I don't know if it was my generation. I don't know if it was a generation after me, but somewhere we kind of veered off course a little bit. So we have to talk about losing. We have to talk about failure, and we have to say it's okay, and just keep going. And don't give up either. Just keep going. Just keep trying. You're going to get better. The good things are going to happen, but you got to push through it. You just got to do it.
You saw me chuckling when you first started out there. that was my exact speech, let's say years ago, as a football coach. Are you hurt or are you injured? If you're injured, we'll take you out of the game right away. If you're hurt, and again, it will date me, everybody hurts.
Yeah.
And I had two young assistant coaches on the sideline who would start humming or singing that REM song, everybody hurts. And just so, but again, we took great care of our students. It was just that, trying to get them to focus and maybe tell us, okay, what
Right.
is the injury? What's the condition? Of course, we would never send anyone back out there
No.
unless they were ready to go. Very good
Right.
stuff. Okay. We're going to take a quick break. Again, we're visiting with Kate Doherty, but we'll be back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out their indoor scoring tables and video boards. They not only create revenue for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com and see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. Kate, another one of our original questions has to do with this idea of social awareness. And I know that's a big umbrella, but how can an athletic director do a better job of being socially aware for their stakeholders?
Yeah, this is big. This has definitely changed drastically in the last couple of years. I think one of the things that I think about when I think of socially aware is, first of all, just your basic social media, right? I think if as an athletic director, if you know, or at least are aware of the technology that your students are using and how they communicate, then you can at least better understand where their sociability is, as far as how they communicate with their teammates, how they interact. Are they aware themselves of situations that are going on, or are they just kind of screen driven and they just text everybody? I still think having a good old fashioned face-to-face conversation really is worth its weight in gold. I think you'd be surprised at how many of these kids really just want to look somebody in the eye and talk to them once in a while. I think they get tired of the screens too. From a more maybe like a diversifying kind of perspective, I would say majority of high schools these days have diversity and inclusion clubs. They'll have directors, they'll have programs. There's spectrum and LGBTQ programs in almost any high school. There's all these different diverse programs. And, as an athletic director, your schedule is tight. There's not a lot of wiggle room in there. But I would say that knowing who these directors are, who the teachers are that run these programs, even touching base with them once in a great while, or finding out if there's a meeting that you could pop your head into, even if it's only for 15 minutes. Just that 15 minutes of having a different perspective of maybe what some of the other students are really going through. I think it helps. I know that, I've seen so many athletic directors, it's a tough day. There's so much to do, and you can get your head down into a schedule for hours and not bring your head back up. But it's a good kind of reminder to say, hey, I have to pick my head up too, and I have to look at these people that I work with, and I have to go walk around the school. And if there's a spectrum meeting going on somewhere, maybe I'm going to pop my head in there and just say hi to everybody and just find out how they're doing, how they're feeling. I think that goes a long way, and it goes a long way with your sociability with your students as well, that you're not just on a single track of just caring about athletics, that you care about the entire educational institution, and that, it is one big, massive institution that has to work cohesively. It may not be available at every school, but if it is, I'd say try it. If it's not, maybe you're the person that starts it. If you want to put something else on your plate, just, give it a try.
Yeah, it goes back again to what you shared earlier about building those relationships and being seen, not just being that person behind the desk, so very important. Okay. Again,
Yeah.
I think you're going to make a great AD. Okay.
Well, thank you. We're not there yet. We're getting there. We're trying.
Kate, this has been really cool visiting with you and getting to know you, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
We always wrap up with our athletic director toolbox. And you're certainly no stranger to the world of athletics. And we're going to take a break and hear from Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack, who sponsor our AD Toolbox segment. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first AD job. But I'm only going to let you put 3 items in their toolbox. So when we come back, we're going to find out what aspiring athletic director Kate Doherty is going to put into her new AD toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. We use surveys for just about everything at my schools, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the information that we got back was almost always over the top positive, and it'll be the same for you. But the surveys also allowed that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. And many times they'd share a small problem that you could address and keep it from turning into a big problem because you didn't know about it, because you hadn't done a survey. If you've never given your parents or your student athletes a survey to take the pulse, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com or shoot them an email at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, welcome back, everyone. It's toolbox time. We've been visiting with Kate Doherty, an aspiring athletic director from Massachusetts, also a longtime athletic trainer. So she's no stranger to the world of athletics. So, Kate, you're getting ready to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 tools are going to go in Kate Doherty's athletic director toolbox?
All right. So the first one's going to be a tangible item. It's going to be a multi-tool. And if anyone doesn't know what a multi-tool is, it is, it's a set of pliers that also has 6 or 7 other tools folded into it. It's got the Phillips head screwdriver, the flathead screwdriver. It's got a knife. I think it's got a bottle opener. It's got, a couple of other dials and switches in there. It might have a drill bit. It all depends on the size you get, but you will always need a tool. Always. There's always something that needs to be fixed, tightened, loosened, taken off, put back on, and usually in a short amount of time. So if you had that instead of waiting for someone else to come and bring it, you could get the job done pretty quickly. There's always something. So I'd say I'm going to give the multi-tool first. The second thing I'm going to give, it's kind of funny because this is totally my personality, is I'm going to give you a bag of snacks. Because there are going to be days when you're not going to have lunch, and there might be days when you don't even have dinner. And that's something that I've learned from my past experience as an athletic trainer, is that sometimes you just don't get to eat. You have these days. So you got to have some snacks. You got to have something that you can carry that's going to, get you through the day if you happen to miss a major meal, because there isn't just always going to be a sub shop around the corner, or maybe the snack shop's not open for your soccer game, or so you're just going to have that backup. You need the backup. We'll put some healthy snacks in there, but we're also going to put some candy in there because, I'm not a jerk. I'm going to put some Reese's peanut butter cups in there, and I'll probably put some lollipops in there for the sugar people. But the last thing I'm going to put in there isn't tangible. That's just going to be patience. I think that in order to really succeed at this, you have to have patience, and not just with people, but with yourself. You need to be able to give yourself the space to learn, and you need to give yourself the space to make mistakes, and you need to have patience doing that. And so you need to have patience with yourself. You need to have patience with your students. You need to have patience with your parents. And, you need to have patience with your staff. And, just everyone just sometimes needs to take a deep breath and take a step back, and we'll figure it out together. That's probably the three things that I give. Patience is pretty important. It takes up a lot of the toolkit in there.
No, the multi-tool is spoken like a true athletic trainer, but you're absolutely right. As you're walking around campus, these things pop up, and just having that, on your belt or wherever, it is so critical. And I love the patience. That's a tool that I learned how to use way too late in my athletic career. So appreciate you sharing. We didn't do this earlier, so shame on me. If one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, find out more about Kate Dougherty, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you? I'm
on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Certainly reach out a request, and I'll be happy to chat some things out. I love to debate, and I love to chat things out. It helps me think of things from other perspectives. So by all means, if I have given an answer today that someone didn't appreciate and they want to chat it out, I'll chat it out. Maybe I didn't think of something that someone else did. And if someone definitely wants to pick my brain, absolutely give a shout out. I like to chat things out. It definitely, I think, helps a lot of us think from other perspectives. So I'm all for it.
Well, we appreciate you sharing today on the podcast, and all the best moving forward in your job search. Again, Kate can be found on LinkedIn. That's how we met. So principals or hiring coordinators, reach out. I think you've got a great candidate here. So Kate, all the best moving forward, and thanks again for being on the podcast.
Jake, thanks. This was fantastic. I had a great time, and I appreciate you calling me.
Okay. Well, definitely keep us posted and let me know if there's anything that I can do.
Will do.
For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of all of these interviews get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back next time for another episode of the Educational AD. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Again, we want to give a shout out to our partners, We Coach, and the global community of women in high school sports. Two great organizations. You really need to get involved with them. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.